Greetings, everyone, all you hims, hers, and thems alike. I'm Eric Hansen from OTT.X, and on behalf of the whole team, whether you're watching live, on demand, or tuning in via podcast, we are delighted you're here. This is episode 7 of OTT.X's series, The Buzz, where we are once again honored to turn the stage over to an interstellar powerhouse of prognosticators, pontificators, and rabble-rousers of the streaming world to get together, share their thoughts about what's going on today in the world of streaming. Before we turn things over to this episode's amazing crew of Buzzketeers, I want to make sure to mention that you can find and subscribe to all episodes of The Buzz via podcast on Spotify. Just search for OTT.X. Be sure to follow us so you can receive all future episodes as well. We'll drop the Spotify link to the podcast in the chat so you'll be able to get there easily. With that, I am thrilled to welcome this episode's moderator and a great partner to OTT.X, David Bloom, senior contributor at Forbes.
Hey. How's it going, everybody? I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because Eric very focused on pontificating and I'll be the pontiff of pontificators. How's that? I will tomorrow be moderating 2 panels tied to the OTT.X in-person gathering, their industry year-end wrap-up event at the Skirball here in Los Angeles. You can find more information on the site, and that should be a good time. But in the meantime, we got a fantastic panel for today. No matter where you are, you don't have to physically be in place, and I strongly recommend staying tuned in. Let's start. I'm going to let each of them briefly introduce themselves. I'll start with Andrew Rosenman. Andrew?
Thanks, David. I am Andrew Rosenman, Vice President of Advanced TV Partnerships and Strategy for Equativ, a global SSP ad server and DSP. And pleased to be here. This feels like a game show where we're revealing everyone.
Yeah, it's not quite what's my line, but we will want to know what your line is on this thing and that. So, Strath Hamilton, the host with the most, and at TriCoast. I like that. Hey, that could work.
That's great. Thank you, David. I'm CEO of the TriCoast group of companies, and we publish apps, fast channels. We have a library of 3,000 movies and television shows. And recently this year, we started an ad ops company called 100% Fill that provides supply and demand for AVOD channels.
All right, LaShawn.
Hollywood Squares, I think, is one of those games back in the day. So dating myself a little. My name is LaShawn McGhee. I am a co-founder and chief product officer at Revry. We are the world's largest LGBTQ streaming network. We have fast channels and we're AVOD and SVOD. We also actually launched an ad network this year called Prison Riot, so that we can also do supply and demand. So it's been a pretty fun year.
And don't feel bad about knowing what Hollywood Squares are. It was on for approximately 427 years. And Paul Lynde held the center square, I believe, for every one of those 427 years, or at least the 426, the sainted Paul Lynde.
Bruce Valanche was top right.
That's right. Bruce tried to step into a very difficult pair of shoes to fill. Christine.
Hey everyone, my name is Christine Vallrugo. I am the Director of Sales Operations for OTTera. And OTTera is a white label service that allows companies, publishers to launch customized OTT services, whether that's fast channels or across all the different platforms, smart TVs, connected TV devices, mobile devices. And we also have an ad network. I will say you guys will have to give me a little bit of a break today. So I am new to OTTera. OTTera acquired the company that I ran, Float Left Interactive, about a month ago. So I am not new to the space, but new to OTTera, but excited to share some insights with you guys today. Thanks for having me.
So, Christine, I'll just say that if you don't know anything about your new employer, just make stuff up. What could go wrong? Right?
No, it's very there's a lot to learn, but hey, that's a good thing. That means we got a lot to offer, right?
Still learning and growing. That's what we love to hear. And finally, Chris Yates.
David, great to see you, and thank you for having me. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at an ad-supported streaming service for global Black culture called Mansa, and I have never watched an episode of Hollywood Squares.
Yeah. I think the important word there is yet, because I guarantee you there is a fast channel out there
It's Hollywood Squares.
of Hollywood Squares. There's got to be one, right? If there's not, it's a
should be.
travesty, and the fast network is not as strong and good as it could be. So with that, let's get started here. There's been a boatload of buzz around bundling in the last few weeks, led by that Netflix Max deal on Verizon, which is apparently wanting to be the bundler of all things subscription, not just streaming video, but like Headspace, meditation stuff and workout things and so much else. There are also reports of a possible Apple TV Plus, Paramount Plus pairing. Who's next? Who's doing it in smaller services? Is this something you guys are thinking about or are seeing if you're a service provider like Christine and that guy? Yes, Andrew. Thank you for beeping at me. What are you guys seeing? And then Strath had I think a good little tweak to this question, which was, what effect will bundling have on the migration from SVOD to AVOD? Will it increase or starve that migration? If they're bundling, do they still feel the pressure to go to AVOD and ad support, or will it make it go faster? I have some thoughts about that. But let's start, Strath, since you do that out there. What's bundling doing with TriCoast, and what do you think this means for that shift to AVOD?
Well, I think, looking at the larger picture, the question is, why are people bundling? And the one figure that sticks out to me is Disney losing $11 billion last year. So that's billion with a B. And the reason—
It's a big castle, Strath. It's a very big castle.
It's a big castle, but they can't sustain an SVOD model on their own. I don't think anybody can. I think that's why cable channels bundled 20 years ago. So you got a situation where they're going to bundle. It's, the space is getting tighter. The competition's getting tighter. So the SVODs are going to bundle. The question is, for most of the folks, I think, in this panel, is what effect is that going to have on our AVOD channels? Is it going to make it better for us once a consumer gets a bundle that they like, be it Apple, Paramount, Warner Discovery? Are they then going to say, well, I can't spend any more, so let me look at what these narrowcast channels are? And that's one alternative. The other alternative is, hey, I've got everything I want in my bundle now. I don't need to go and watch any of these narrowcast channels. And I've kind of been working on that with our marketing team. And our initial research indicates that once folks get a bundle, it's actually going to help AVOD, because people will then know what they have in terms of their subscription and won't have any more money. So they're going to go out and they're going to look for AVOD channels that are narrowcasts to the specific things that they like. So I'm kind of bullish on the process of bundling. I think it's going to be healthy. I think that we've been approached, TriCoast has been approached twice to be part of bundles, and we've also just got an offer for an asset purchase. So the consolidation is what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it because the platforms are sunsetting channels. It's the non-performing channels on Vizio, Samsung, LG. Everybody's, sunsetting. So you've got to be part of a network that's performing. And I think that's what everyone's looking for.
Yeah, I think it's important to be part of something that's bigger than yourself, but that's more of a philosophical thing than a business decision. LaShawn, I always interested where Revry's going. You guys have been pretty active in doing a lot of deals and started Prism Ride this year, et cetera, et cetera. Tell me a little bit about what your all's thoughts are. You all have a distinctive value proposition, et cetera. So where are you guys going?
I mean, I would love to see a niche bundle work. But it's more challenging than that for us because
I mean, it's almost like they're a contradiction in terms, right? Niche bundle almost feels like it's a bunch of niches that aren't supposed to be jammed together, right?
Exactly. So it also just price point because some of our carriage deals won't allow us to offer something at that significant of a discount. So it's not going to be beneficial to someone to bundle in that way. So I mean, it's fascinating and it makes sense through the telcos. It really makes it. I was watching Freebie recently and kept getting the Verizon commercial where they were bundling Apple at the time, and you get a year of it, and I'm like, so with the economy the way that it is, and with people stretched thin in general, ad-supported content kind of is really kind of king right now.
Okay, so it sounds like what I'm hearing from the Revry kingpin, human pen. Let's go with human pen. Is it'll help people like you guys because you still have a better value. Free stuff to beat, even if it's compared to a discount.
It also just highlights the fact that advertisers need to understand that there are other places for them to advertise other than broadcast.
Yeah. Christine, I'm curious, what are you seeing with the white labeling that you do? You guys are talking to a lot of different providers of streaming services, or a lot of different content owners and library owners. Is there some push toward something, some sort of way to do this? And what do you think it means for your various customers? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, over the past probably year or two, we've definitely seen, from my previous role, larger companies absorbing smaller companies, right? Pop went into Paramount.
And it happened to you.
It did. And I think it really makes sense, right? I mean, even us as viewers, right? I'm exhausted trying to find, the content that I want to watch on all of these different channels that I have and apps that I have, that I think the bundling makes sense, especially for my wallet, right? I realized that I have Netflix and Prime and Paramount and Peacock. I mean, the list is growing. And I think, as the list keeps growing of subscriptions, people are like, oh my God, there's more money I have to spend to watch this particular show. So I think, to everyone's point, it's definitely going to help out the AVOD channels, right? Because people don't have to pay for those. And you're definitely seeing that across the board. I mean, fast is always growing. It's very much a buzzword right now, if you will. But also the AVOD, app providers themselves. And I think, to LaShawn's point, the advertisers understand there's a new area to advertise and get their message out. That's not just broadcast or subscription services.
Yeah, Chris, you guys have obviously another specialty channel focused on a very specific, well-defined audience. Where would you go in this bundling fever? Where does it make sense for Mansa to be?
Well, Mansa is fully ad supported, so there isn't so actually what I probably should do is back up and say that bundling already happens on an ad supported basis inside of the FAST ecosystem. So the Roku channel is effectively a bundle, right? You don't have to go to 20 apps to watch 20 different FAST channels. And so Mansa is already, we have an owned and operated FAST channel that we distribute outside of our app. We're live on a number of platforms today. Most recently went live on Vizio. We're live on Plex and Redbox, and we're going live on a number of other big platforms in the next couple of months. There probably isn't a paid bundle that Mansa would be able to jump into reasonably, because our service by definition is free. Having said that, I think the concept of a paid bundle, it makes sense for the primary reason that it just simplifies billing for a customer. And in an ideal state, it would simplify billing and the user experience as well in terms of playback, so you didn't have to go to multiple apps. But at the same time, just simplifying how someone pays for multiple services is just a really good customer experience. One of the reasons that cable was successful. For the last point, for places like us, ad-supported services, I don't really see it affecting demand for our service or ad-supported services in general. You look at the research, every American on average watches 5 hours of television a day. 35 hours a week. And what they're not doing is watching that on traditional cable services today as they migrate away from it. So there's still a ton of demand out there for customers to watch content on a variety of places. And their media diet's going to include a combination of SVOD and ad-supported services.
Well, Andrew, this seems like a good time to ask you, as the resident chief ad guy, is this going to drive? I mean, look, the Netflix Max deal, I think it's to the ad-supported versions of those, right? And Netflix in particular is just dying to get some scale on its ad-supported tier. It's got, I don't know, 15 million or whatever was the last number I saw. I mean, they're just itching to get some suckers in there to do that, because they can get that to scale and it could start to make sense. So is the push here, don't bundle unless you're doing ad supported, because you really want to get, that really is more like the old basic cable value prop, right? I mean, from your perspective as an ad guy, what do you think about strategies here? What makes sense?
Well, first of all, if you're the pontiff and you're making me the ad guy, then shouldn't there be some ceremony like involved?
I'll have an investiture ceremony with you. I think we'll do it the day after Christmas, when we're sort of sobering up after everything, and I'll see you then.
Great.
You'll
So
get a
I
little
was
red hat
fortunate.
and some really cool slippers. That's the best part. It's the slippers.
So now I need an outfit. Like
Yeah.
I
And
just-
That's on you, dude. Your vestments are on you. So that's it's like you got to bring a uniform to work.
Well played. My apologies to the rest of the panel. This is David and I haven't seen each other in a little bit. We owed each other this. Let's see. I was really fortunate last week. I was in London at the Future TV Advertising Global event, where Peter Naylor and some of the other Netflix folks came to talk to the global TV industry, and that was fascinating. What was fascinating, I found, was some of what wasn't said. So they didn't talk about scale, they talked about quality. And I think, that comes back to a couple of points. I think that,
Like what you
Strath
don't
made
say
as well.
matters too, right? I mean, it's like what's the hole in this conversation that these guys are having, right?
I think it was almost the remarks were almost certainly well considered. Let's just put it that way. At the same time, Rita, the head of advertising sales for Disney, was also there and did a terrific, very sort of open conversation about it. I think the missing piece to, the rebundling, it's just like cable channels. Well, if you were getting a per sub fee for your channel and you're
Now we're
getting ad
talking.
revenue,
Yeah, now we're
then
talking.
you
A
would-
little retrans
you would-
fee action. Yeah.
sure, then you will have replicated what used to exist in the content ecosystem, but you don't. So the barriers are lower to get in. You can, spin up. I mean, Christine will help you, launch your fast channel, get distributed, give you a monetization engine, and might even, connect with our system to put some money in your pocket from our demand side. So the barriers are lower, but your costs are pretty steep just to get going and to look at the pennies. So, long way of saying, I'm getting more and more comfortable with saying this, David. I honestly don't know. I think the market is smarter than all of us and will give us not what we want, but what we deserve.
Well, that's going to be ugly if we get what we deserve. I'm not looking forward to that, because goodness knows that could be ugly. But that being said, entertainment research findings recently said, and this is just shocking, but I bring it up. Users are looking for simpler, more straightforward ways to access their content. It seems to me one of the challenges here is like, okay, I've now bundled my very expensive streaming service with your very expensive streaming service. But what's the user experience that ties them together? How does that, can Amazon say spackle, or Roku spackle it all together so it looks pretty, or Verizon, noted for its interfaces? So I'm just curious about if you're going to play with others. I mean, how deep does that integration go? What do consumers want now? Or are we just so worn out from trying to navigate all this stuff? We kind of think, just whatever. AI save me or something. Strath, what do you think?
Well, for me, I think the consumer experience on Samsung is different to Vizio, is different to LG, and each one of these has sneaky little ways of keeping you in the Samsung smart TV space and out of these bundles. I mean, every time I change channels, I end up in Samsung back at the home space, and they don't give me any shortcuts. And I think the bundles are going to have to deal with the fact that they're hopping out of the smart TV space, and smart TVs don't like it.
Right. So I don't know if you knew this, Strath, but Samsung is Korean for Corleone family. They just keep putting you back in.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. You kind of get out, and you're Michael Corleone. So
yeah.
But that's interesting. So those platforms really tend to militate against the bundle, and obviously Verizon wants to keep you on the Verizon stuff, and they'd love to sell you some high speed. One of the great oxymorons, fixed wireless service as well, right? I think they're getting into it as well. I know AT&T is pushing it hard in my neighborhood. But it's interesting to see what they're doing here. Are they, the platforms, which is where you guys your products mostly live, right? You're dependent on Roku and Vizio and Amazon Fire and Google TV. But they're all pulling you back in and kind of working against being able to be out in something else. Is that your take?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So how do we make a better experience? I mean, how do you play well with others? Are you guys constantly, Christine, you guys, since you have to deal with all these different platforms, are you guys constantly having to update for each of these different platforms, or you guys just pick some big winners like Roku because it's 60 million US households, or what do you guys do?
Did David freeze?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, I guess I could hopefully he's not still going over there. What we really do is we reach every single platform that there is, right? All the way down to even in Comcast, right? I think what's interesting is the way we're talking about things and platforms really trying to make themselves sticky. So I worked for Comcast prior to my OTT app development years. And their goal was just to make something very sticky, right? They wanted people to stay on cable and not leave their platform. And so what they did is Comcast was the first company to make a deal with Amazon Prime to bring their app to the set-top box, right? And so they've essentially kind of created a hub, if you will, for the most popular apps that people would want to watch. And I think what you'll see in the space, and probably one of our clients is a great example, where they are essentially housing other channels, fast channels on their own app, right? So they have micro fast channels within their app, giving viewers the ability to watch all sorts of different content from different brands in a single place. And I think you'll probably see an increase of that, right? Because it is exhausting to have to go to all of these different platforms. I mean, essentially, if someone could recreate cable in a digital space, I think we would be all rich. So if you guys all want to get together and do that, we should, because I think it would catch on really quickly. Everyone just wants all of their content in one place. Let's make it digital. Let's recreate cable.
That makes the metrological purchase make so much more sense now.
Yeah,
just because they're an app store ecosystem, so that now they can build their own app store environment, so they can keep you in the it makes a lot of sense.
100%.
The Samsung thing is interesting to me. First of all, people like to watch where they like to watch. So I will watch certain things on Samsung, but not necessarily, even though my TV is Samsung. So what I end up doing is, so Hulu, for instance, on the Samsung TV, if I'm using their app, it functions differently than it does on Apple TV. So I end up going back to Apple because I like that functionality better. So, primarily if I can get it on Apple, then I'm going to try to get it on Apple. So this, this is why we have to be on all these different platforms, because there's no way to, you have to reach the people where they are.
100%. And I'm looking at my TV right now. I have a Samsung TV, I have a Fire TV and an Apple TV, both plugged into it. And it just depends on to your point, which app I want to watch. There are some things I like better on Apple and some things I like better on Fire, and some remotes that I like better than one another. And it really speaks to the point of the audience is fragmented. They have different ways of viewing. You need to be across all of these platforms to reach the entirety of the audience nowadays, which is drastically different, I think, than it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
You are both the destroyers of my audience graph, right?
Yeah.
What you've done bouncing around between those platforms within your household and my device graph is it should be punishable by curse you all. But yeah, I mean, think about how that complicates the idea of at least being trying to understand basics like frequency of delivery to LaShawn or Christine. I mean, we wrestle with that every day. Maybe we'll get back to some more on that later. There are some other stats, I think. I don't know if David's rejoined, but yeah, like, what this means from the ad side then. I have no real idea behaviorally what your preferences are and why you like what you like, when you like it, on what schedule. And it's created, everyone's coping with it, but it ain't as clean as TV.
For sure. And I worked for Comcast advertising division, and it was a while back ago now, but while I was selling OTT advertising, that was one of the biggest hotspots, was how do we measure reach and frequency when there's all of these different platforms? I don't know if Comcast has solved it yet today, but 2 years ago, that was still something that they were trying to figure out. And if a monster cable provider like Comcast is struggling to figure that out, you can only imagine, all of the other ad providers all over, are struggling with that as well. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time.
But it doesn't seem to have prevented a lot of the fluidity buying from television back into similar programming on OTT and fast channels. So it's interesting. It's not as much of a barrier as you would think. A recovering agent guy, you would think this is a hill that you would die on, but it isn't, because reach is so important, right? Just eyeballs. Even anonymized eyeballs.
Just a question though, Andrew, for you, is it better for you that you have a feedback loop today of some level of consumption on OTT versus traditional television, where it was all qualitative surveys and Nielsen ratings?
Well, it depends what you mean by better.
Right.
So I think there are diminishing returns sometimes in over-investing in your data flow and using those signals as, I mean, we're back to the pontiff, as gospel, right? Versus it depends what your goals are. I mean, I'm slightly concerned at the degree to which a lot of people want to turn television into a performance advertising mechanism primarily, without recognizing its capacity to build awareness and brands and equity. And so if we let the direct response digital horde into the castle and allow them to fully dominate the conversation, I have some concerns about that. I don't know that we want to allow for it to become the high fidelity center of the living room DR platform. But that's my little contribution to the buzz for today. Maybe that's controversial. I don't know.
That's really going to be. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry about this. Speaking of platforms and providers, this is the Pontiff from a secure, undisclosed location where I'm cursing Spectrum, who has chosen to once again ratify their reliability, something that they advertise of their network, and it blinked out. And I am dialing in because I'm a dedicated pontiff of pontificating. It sounded like you were saying something. Were you saying something about perhaps the VR universe that's on the way, Andrew? Because I think that's interesting. Just yesterday, or just this week, actually, Apple released an update to their iPhone operating system, that includes the ability to capture spatial video with your new iPhone 15, which will then be something you can look at for decades to come on your Vision, your Vision Pro, or whatever they're going to call it by the time we get to this point next year. But we're on the edge of an interesting new space where you can do a lot of cool new things. Are we going to start seeing bundles of VR content alongside our other things? Oh my God, are you kidding me?
You have our sympathy, Matt. I think I read that Spectrum actually lost high-speed internet customers in the last quarter.
I am just having a blast, let me tell you. So
how's the connectivity in the Pope Mobile, David? Because that car looks pretty rough.
You know, it's really a security measure designed to keep Bulgarian terrorists from taking me out. Often a concern, but I guess let me try and circle back here and try to reclaim something. Yesterday, Netflix released a ton of data, the most data that any streaming service has ever released. They didn't release everything, but they released a lot of stuff. 18,000 shows and viewership. Now, it was interesting because the bottom, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, are all kind of capped at 100,000. Weirdly, the exact same number of hours watched. And I find that amusing because it suggests that the end of the tail there, the long tail, is the same size. But I'm curious for folks out there, are you guys going to start looking at this data as ideas for things to go license now that everybody's starting to license again? Any thoughts on that? Anybody want to chime in on this?
We've
Yates, perhaps? Or Strath, go ahead.
Yeah, we've just licensed a Netflix show. It's a movie called Collision, and was their number 3 movie around the world. And we've licensed it off Netflix, so we have the AVOD rights to it. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that happen as Netflix decides that there's money off their own network. So I do think that you see licensing of off network.
Yeah, I mean, like only something like less. I mean, a significant portion of Netflix's shows that were popular were their shows, but a lot of other stuff, like more than 48% or something like that, is stuff that's out there, presumably, that will cycle off of them and come to other folks. Chris, any thoughts on whether this becomes like useful competitive licensing information? Like, oh, that thing got watched. Is there an arbitrage? Like, it got watched this much, or does it all of a sudden like set the price for some shows that maybe were kind of out in the wilderness a little bit before?
You know, it's a really good point, and it's really interesting that Netflix released this amount of data, especially after this many years of resisting. Probably doesn't do justice to the level of restrictions that they put on anyone seeing data, including, by the way, their own creators. Look, it's great data. It's a great data point. It's not definitive. I like to look at it. This kind of data is really good to look at it relative to other shows on the same platform. Having said that, there's a lot of reasons that something can be popular on Netflix and not necessarily right for, say, Mansa or another platform. There's a lot of reasons something could be popular on Netflix just because it was, somehow promoted in different ways, or it was a moment in time. So it's a great data point. It doesn't suddenly become
that's interesting, because I mean the best answer to your point, or the best sort of reinforcement of Suits. So, or whatever it was on USA Network, and it got seen by whoever could find USA Network on their cable stuff, and the actors find a pretty good tender match, and so that worked out for her. But it goes on to Netflix, and it becomes this gigantic thing this summer. So clearly Netflix, not like the others. It's not like even Disney. It enables things. So what it sounds like you're saying is maybe we can't, it's cool data and it's really interesting, but don't expect to get 100 million hours of viewing out of that show just because Netflix did. It sounds like is what you're saying.
That's right. I actually think the reverse is probably more likely to be true, that sellers will use this data as a means to sell their project when it cycles off Netflix, or they'll use it as a negotiating tool to increase their price. I don't think it's definitive for us. The only way something could even be definitive, frankly, would be if we could get apples to apples across multiple platforms. And even then, I don't know if that would still be definitive. But look, it's a good data point. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll look through it. And I'll spend a lot of time and enjoy it. But I don't know if it solves all of our content acquisition questions or problems.
That's an interesting point. It's better for sellers to put in there, say, look, we got this much, and you can get. I mean, it's almost like it's a new form of currency, just like Nielsen numbers, right? And Andrew, you can appreciate this as much as anybody, or Christine, given what you guys do. It's like a new form of currency, but what's that currency worth, and is it an inflated currency for everybody else? Any thoughts, Andrew?
Well, I saw it. I took a brief look. I've been traveling a lot. I saw it more as a heat map of cultural relevance than almost anything else, right? And it's, what you're not getting is some of what's important, which is the sort of intervals of usage and some of the important stuff over time that you would want to understand. Cumulatively, it tells you something. Is it currency? Currency has value to the person spending it, and it has the same value to the person exchanging goods or services for it. So I guess we'll find out if it's current.
But what it was a requirement of the SAG-AFTRA deal, of that negotiation. They didn't just do it because they wanted to be nice. They were required to do it. And, who knows how truthful when they start capping everything at 100,000. It's not, I don't think it's that relevant. I think Netflix is very data aggressive, and they had to do this data dump, and so they did.
What I would love to
LaShawn,
see.
any thoughts? Any value for you guys over there at Revry?
I mean, I don't know if it's a value directly, because it just goes to the creativity of business to continue to kind of thrive. And if you're losing subscribers and revenue over here, what can we do to like kind of point people in a different direction? Also, one of the things that people didn't talk about is when Netflix went to an AVOD model, they didn't have any AVOD contracts, so they had to go back and renegotiate all of those contracts.
Right.
How much of their content is even available on AVOD, and of the list that Netflix would be willing to sell, how much of that is just based on the fact that these are the only people that were willing to give us AVOD? Because everybody else might want you to prove the model so that they can say, okay, yeah, it's working for you. I can see where this is profitable for me. I'm going to allow you to license my title. Because I bet a third of Netflix's library is actually even available on AVOD.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's another distortion to the value of the data. I mean, you've got this floor of 100,000 hours. You've got no one is Netflix but Netflix, as they'll be happy to tell you over and over again in their earnings calls. And then thirdly, you're right. The stuff that's actually AVOD eligible is a relatively small universe. You said a third of the titles.
That's
so
just like,
what do you even...
I'm not, that's not an actual, but I mean, just imagine, like, they had to go back and renegotiate all of those titles.
Right.
And no one, not everyone would be willing to do it.
Right. Maybe they have other deals or whatever. So interesting. So Christine, What's your take on all this data and how it might be used, since you are advising companies running these services about what they can do? Is there anything? I mean, what's your take on the value of this data? Is it kind of just an interesting artifact of union negotiation, or is it something we can actually literally take to the bank?
Yeah, I mean, I maybe have a controversial thought on this. To me, it's
I hope
18,000
so.
lines of content, right? Like, it doesn't tell me insights that I could personally use. What's valuable to OTTera and to anyone that's really providing an OTT service to a broadcaster or a publisher is what types of content, right? Like, do I need to go through? I would love to know, what are the highest performing genres, right? Is it language specific, country specific? Where is Netflix? What device is Netflix being watched on most? Like, those are the types of insights that I would love to see them provide, because those are the kinds of things that I can take back to my clients or potential clients and be like, look, like, these are the types of, genres that people like to watch most. Create a fast channel out of this, create an app specific to this. But personally, when I even looked at it this morning, I'm like, well, this is awesome. Like, I'm glad to know that the shows that I watch regularly are very popular. But, for me, it's just 18,000 lines of, content titles where I could see it would be valuable for, other types of business content, people that are acquiring content. But for us, unless someone's trying to create a fast channel with, the top, 50 titles, for us, it's interesting to read, but not a whole lot of value. I'd love to see them provide more insights and industry knowledge than just what they provided.
And I'm going to make a prediction here, and I'm going to ask you guys for your predictions. I'm going to make a prediction, Christine, that yes, everybody in this call and everybody that's a member of OTT.X and everybody that's in the business who doesn't work at Netflix is desperate to see all that stuff you just laid out in a very fine, wonderful, granular way. And Ted Sarandos actually yesterday in the call when they were releasing it says, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, give me the state of the streaming report that Nielsen provides.
Yeah. I can't imagine them doing platform, by platform, by certainly not demographics of the audience. Certainly, probably they weren't even going to do country breakdowns, right? Because that's really an interesting notion. It's like, okay, I noticed in the top 5, one of the top 5 is, and it's not totally surprising given Squid Games and Parasite and BTS and the rise of Korean culture, that one of the top 5 is a season of Glory, which is not the great 35-year-old, film about a black soldiers regiment in the Civil War, but a Korean show. And talk about surprising. It was like, how did that happen? How did Glory season 2, I think, get in the top 5? What is it that I mean, it's even bigger than Squid Game in terms of long-term watch, but it also speaks to the global nature, right, of some of this stuff, that they're able to push out far beyond Korea or far beyond the U.S. shores and hit this 192 countries or whatever they're at this point. We don't have a lot of time left, and I don't know how long before, AT&T blows up on me on top of Spectrum. So I'm going to ask some predictions for 2024. What's the biggest issue you guys in your company expect to face in 2024? What's the biggest thing that you guys are getting ready for and dealing with and trying to plan for? LaShawn, let's start with you.
I mean, we're just strengthening our relationship with brands. There's this notion of Pride 365 that we've been, I would say, successfully been able to tackle, which is kind of the phenomenon where people only show up during the major holidays, and they only know about the events. So we've been able to get brands to understand that here's how you can participate in other parts of the year. Here's how you can be a part of things for any other time, and come celebrate with us. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really just our relationship with brands and expanding that.
Yeah, don't just show up on June 1st or whatever and buy a month and then disappear for 11 more months is really your all's push. That makes sense. Chris, what are you guys thinking about?
So for us, it's really about scale. We launched Mansa in April of this year, and we've been growing ever since. 2024 is about, scaling, delivering on the promise that we've made to, a variety of stakeholders, including our customers. So it's about scaling both the number of hours of content that we have, the quality of the content, scaling monetization to echo LaShawn. There is a tremendous opportunity for brands to participate more fully in the OTT ecosystem than they do today. And that probably speaks a little bit to what Andrew was saying around, it doesn't all have to be performance marketing or direct response. One of the great things about TV historically was that there was those water cooler moments of everyone's watching this show, and so that 30-second spot had massive cultural impact and resonance. We don't see that so much on OTT today. So for us, about scaling the service where we can start to engage brands, we are, but we need to scale more. And then obviously, it's about customer acquisition, and once you're on that hamster wheel of acquire customer, drive engagement, reduce churn, that never slows down. So for us, it's all about growing the business.
All right. So get bigger, faster.
Got to get big.
Stay alive.
Scale solves a lot of problems.
Andrew, what are you guys dealing with? This should be a good time for you guys.
Well, as the guy with the hotline from your mouth to the big guy's ears, right? That'd be great.
Or at least to the media buyers' ears, who are not necessarily God.
So I am still, yesterday I was at an event in Washington, D.C., the Campaigns and Elections Innovation Tech events. And so I know we all don't want to admit it, but 2024 is an election year, presidential, all the way down through the ballot. What's fascinating in every election year is you get media displacement from the influx of all the political dollars. I can tell you, I won't, Chatham House rules, I won't tell you who said it, but there was one fairly prolific advertiser, action committee type, who said, we are pulling all of our broadcast budgets and it is all going into streaming, 100%, not looking back. So yeah. I would anticipate that there will be some interesting moments on the streaming side where publishers and platforms will be making decisions about the type and tenor of political ads they are willing to support through this cycle. And expect there to be some bumps in the road because the reporting requirements on streaming don't exist where they exist on broadcast. So you are going to see folks pushing the boundaries of what's possible on streaming and political ads this year.
I think that's a really interesting point, and that dovetails with an observation Roku put out in its predictions for next year, which was that advertisers would cut the cord and go much more strongly to CTV, and I think that that's true. What you're saying is you're hearing it from big brands. They're saying, "Screw, we're pulling the ripcord and jumping out of the plane now." While it's heading down into the ocean to go to CTV.
Yeah, I sort of disturbed that I happen to agree with Roku, but this is just my observation.
Just because you all both agree the sky is blue does not make you a bad person or them a bad company. Okay. But I understand your point. Christine, what are you thinking? I know that you've had 32 days now to get settled in over there, and you know everything that the company's thinking and where it's being challenged and what the opportunities are. What's next?
I have gotten a crash course. But what I've really learned from OTTera is their goal is really to expand globally into upcoming markets, right? So think LATAM, Africa, Asia. And I think it kind of goes hand in hand, right? So we talked a little bit about fast today, but there's definitely fast saturation, fast limitations, and most notably in those up and coming markets. And so I think there's going to be, of course, still a focus on fast channels, but a heavier focus on apps specifically in those markets where we can create micro channels and really be a distribution pipeline for, content publishers trying to reach their audience in one way or another, whether that is through a fast channel or across the many, many platforms that people are able to watch content nowadays. So, global expansion is huge. And to the point we talked about with Netflix, Korea content is big. Why not have a channel there or in Africa or any of these other up and coming markets? So it's definitely exciting, and we're adding team members to our team from all over the world. So, to kind of echo Chris's, 2024 predictions, it's about scale and global expansion here at OTTera.
Okay. So Strath, I know you guys are TriCoast. Would you guys be expanding to additional coasts and have to rename your company, or what are you guys doing?
Well, we're listening at the moment very carefully to our platform partners who are telling us what kind of apps and fast channels to create. And it's interesting that the channels that they want us to create are ones that are not language specific, because the cost of creating different language versions in 192 channels like Netflix does is very extensive. But there are other areas of entertainment that don't require language, and we're moving into those. But for the next year, we're focusing on who we are. Content acquisition remains important to us, but customer acquisition is going to really take the lead for us. And how we actually obtain customers, looking at that process. I was kind of interested in Chris's note about bundling, that we are all bundled when we end up on Pluto anyway. And the way that we're looking at it is that may be brand depressive as opposed to brand active. If you're channel 283 on Pluto, really, how much customers are going to be that interested in you, and how can you create loyalty, when you're bundled on a channel like Pluto? We don't think you can do it. So we're going to roll up our sleeves and go out to the horror conventions for Dark Matter TV, the craft conventions for Made It Myself TV. We're going to go out and canvas the influencers in our narrowcast content markets and really focus on getting them to do a two-step flow to increase our customer base.
But that sounds like real boots on the ground kind of work.
Absolutely.
To really
Absolutely.
layer in with those hardcore creators in your space and connect with them. So that'll keep you busy. I hope you can still have enough energy left for another fantastic party next year at that beautiful house. One last thing, because this is OTT.X Buzz. I asked each of you if there was another story of any topic that's been occupying your mind or sitting in your head lately that you'd like to share for just briefly before we hand this back to Eric and the gang. Any thoughts, Chris? Any story that of note out there, not necessarily about the industry, that is occupying your attention?
Nothing that I'd be willing to share on in this forum. But thank you for asking.
Probably for the best. LaShawn, what do you think? Is there a big story out there? Something fun?
For me, it's not even so much that it's one story. I think that, to be honest, it's almost like you have to have an alert for Elon, because you're like, okay, what situation is going to happen over here next? It's kind of like watching a soap opera, a really, really bad one.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to the Elon Fast channel. I think that might be a prediction for next year, with highlights from his visits to each of his companies and his unfamiliarity with who actually works for him. Andrew, any thoughts, any stories out there, any ideas about the world as it's coming at you that have caught your attention?
Yeah, working for a company that's based in Paris and getting a lot of input from folks around the world, and just sort of echoing what Christine had to say about, it's about being global and it's about having scale. I think that I'm trying to do a better job of being aware of the things that are happening in places other than right here and where I live. And I think it's just, I think we all do better when we do. I mean, you were surprised to see something maybe that was, built for an audience that's in the Asia Pacific topping the charts. I don't think we should be surprised by that anymore. I think we live in an interconnected world, and I'm just spending some time thinking about how I can be sort of more aware of what's happening in other places, and maybe a little less aware of Elon.
Yeah. Well, that might keep you sane longer. I will say that I'm less surprised by a Korean show popping forward, given the remarkable success that a tiny country of 40 million people has been able to have with its various cultural exports, than I would be, say, an Indonesian TV show, even though Indonesia is 5 times, 6 times larger than Korea. So, for instance, but anyway, Christine, any stories that caught your ear lately that changed your life or are buzzing around in your head?
Well, I'm a born and raised Chicago girl, so the fact that there's even an article that said maybe the Bears have a chance at making the playoffs is a little frightening. But I do live in Wisconsin now, so now it's Bears Packers I'm living in. But other than that, I am a true streaming girl through and through, and so the headline about Warner Bros. Releasing 37 fast channels to Freevee is kind of echoing Strath's point of, oh my goodness, think about the saturation that these fast channels have, and how important it is to have an app at this point where you can control that environment, because otherwise, again, it's turning into cable. But that's what's been keeping me up at night because, like I said, I think I live and breathe OTT streaming. It's hard to shut it off sometimes. So.
Well, I know you're probably, you look like you don't eat a lot of bratwurst and cheddar cheese, so perhaps this is what occupies your attention instead, probably for the best for your long-term existence on the planet. I'll just throw that out there.
It is true.
Finally, Strath,
in LA for my first
thoughts,
time.
Strath?
Sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
No, that's okay. Well, obviously, I'm concerned about USC. The football team. So that's a big deal for me. But really, I'm trying to wean myself off my addiction to news. I think when there's so much chaos and horror in the world, it's hard to kind of focus on, the entertainment that we're providing people and seeing it as a good thing, because what's the relative value of a movie like It's a Wonderful Life if everybody's being dehoused and there's chaos in the rest of the world? I don't know that I can handle, the full-time news input that I'm taking in. So I got to wean myself off it in order to do a better job.
I understand that feeling as a journalist. I got a lot of incoming news coming at me too, and I totally get that. So unfortunately, it's my job as opposed to your all's job to deal with that. With that, happy holidays to everybody. Again, OTT.X has its year-end event tomorrow at the Skirball. I will be moderating 2 panels of smart people, almost as smart as these guys. And I look forward to those who can make it to joining us up there. Eric, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thanks so much, David, and all of you. We really appreciate your dedication and your to the buzz, and here's us here at OTT.X coming to us live from your bunker at an undisclosed location. Don't feel bad, though. I think it's happening to everybody. Mercury is officially in retrograde starting today, so watch your back. Keep your head down. All right. Well, with that, want to say thanks again to Strath, David, LaShawn, Andrew, Christine, and Chris for that deep dive into the strange and mysterious world of OTT streaming today and football in our country, as well as a number of other things. We'll be back again to kick off the new year with the next episode of The Buzz on January 10th. I hope you'll join us then and get an insider scoop on what's going on in the world of OTT streaming then. You can register to attend this and future episodes of our webcast at our website at OTTX.org and find our podcast on Spotify. I hope you join us and invite your friends and colleagues as well to get in on the buzz. We're proud to offer these sessions free to the OTT industry on behalf of our membership. If you're not yet a member, I want to invite you to head out to the website, OTTX.org, and look into becoming one. We have membership tiers for a broad range of organizations and professionals. The link is in the chat now or very soon, and we hope to see you. Hope to see you very soon. Until next time, thanks everybody, and stream virtuously.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hey.